There is, though it's been here a while, there is it the first Sunday of each month, Susan?
That's what?
When you have the Southern song,
I
the song
hate to say the
revelation.
exact Sunday because it moved this Sunday because of Porch Fest.
But all these folks that write and perform country music come sit on the stage up here on Sunday. They start at 5 and they go until they're done. And so for some country singers that's forever, and for some it's not.
Oh, we cut them off.
But as I learned about these folks that live here and do these things, I learned about this fella that makes guitars here. And I had to meet Mike Hasty of Hasty Guitars. And so I invited him. Price, if we got it going. It's showtime, Mike.
I didn't wear my heels. So. Well, I do appreciate the opportunity to come to you today, and me, I'm a little surprised. I had no idea there was this many people beating at Tipsy McSway's at 9 o'clock in the morning without alcohol. But Skip said that he wanted to hear my story. I don't know that I can tell my story in the amount of time that I've got, but I will hit a couple of the highlights. Obviously, you see this sign, we're going to talk about guitars, but first we're going to talk about how did we get to that point. One thing I have found out about entrepreneurs is they have attitude problems. Good attitude problems. And one of my favorite acronyms is PMA, which stands for Positive Mental Attitude. And I think that that is critical that you maintain that throughout your entire business career. Because, as she mentioned, it's so easy to get down when you really have to be up all the time. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't pay attention to the signs. When I was in the 7th grade, I thought it would be cool to play football. You get to wear all those pads. Everything was, macho. But of course, at 115 pounds and 5'6", I didn't quite have the equipment that I needed, but I went out anyway. And the coach put me as defensive tackle. I think that was a sign. And I think the sign was that God didn't want me playing football. So I quit the football team after 2 days and joined the band. And that started a path that ultimately led to Hasty Guitars, a music environment surrounded by it throughout my entire career. From an education standpoint, I'm an electrical engineer. I went to Southern Tech in the early 70s, and we had a motto back then, and forgive me if I offend somebody, if you want an education, you go to Georgia Tech. If you want a job, you go to Southern Tech. So I came out with all the credentials I needed to get a job. And I took a huge pay cut, came down to Tifton, Georgia, and went to work for my daddy. And at that time, the electronics boom was just starting to hit. Perfect timing. And after 5 years, I figured the room wasn't big enough for both of us to work out of, so I left him and moved to Brunswick. And that was in 1979. And I've been here ever since. I raised 2 boys here. I love this town. It's my hometown, and I can't think of a better place to be than here. But I had a lot of good experiences. At one point, Hasty's Communications had over 100 employees, had 5 locations, covered a territory that encompassed Daytona all the way to Savannah and west over towards Douglas. So needless to say, the company was successful. If that's what it takes to be an entrepreneur, I guess I am one, but I don't think that's what it takes. I think it's what you got up here. So, in the early 80s, I saw paging just starting to hit. And this was pre-flip phone cell days. So, I can relate to the flip phones. And I thought, you know, paging was going to be a huge thing. And I also thought that reoccurring revenue was a good thing. But it comes at a price. You have to invest first and wait on you to get the money back. Kind of like what she talked about with the lab. But anyway, I started a company called ProPage. And Motorola had the market on the infrastructure that it took. And they, in order to build out the network, it would take $100,000 a location. And I needed 120 locations. And I said, there's no way, no way. And it didn't fit in business model. Bell South tried to make it work, and they went out of business. We wound up with all their equipment. But anyway, so I said, I know this has got to be an opportunity. So I designed a way to do what Motorola was doing for $100,000 a site for $5,000 a site. And I took off. And at one time, ProPage was the largest regional carrier in the Southeast. And it's still in business. It's primarily focused on the healthcare market, mission critical messaging, rapid response, and it's been good, been very good. Now, how did I get to this? Well, I sold Hasty's Communications 3 years ago. That enabled me to decide what I want to do the rest of my life. I'm not the kind of person that can just sit down. So I didn't, and I started building acoustic guitars. I have a shop on Shell Drive, and I go there every day and do something. But how did I get to that? I also love to go fishing, and I also love the Florida Keys. So I go to the Keys an awful lot. I got to be great friends with a professional musician down in the Keys, and his name was Fiddlin' Red Simon. I'll give you a guess what he played. But we were fishing one day, and he said, I got to get out of this. This is killing me. It's killing my marriage. It's just killing me. I'm running up and down the road 6, 7 nights a week, drinking too much. And I said, well, Red, what are you going to do? This is all you know how to do. He said, well, I'm going to build custom guitars. And I said, I never heard that. And I played guitar, but I've never heard of custom guitars. And so I said, you know what, that's pretty cool. I'll tell you what, you build the first one for me. So I gave him a deposit, and he went to work. And over a year and a half, we visited every time I went down to the Keys, and he showed me what he had done, and the more he got into it, the more I got into it. And then one night, his wife called me, and she said, I hate to tell you this, but Red had a heart attack, and he's gone. So I said, that's terrible. And it was. And So I told her, I said, Diane, you tell me where we're gonna have a service and what we're gonna do, and I'll be there. So she did, and we were to have a memorial service for him at the Hog's Breath Saloon in Key West, Florida. Some of y'all may have been there, but it was pretty fitting for Red to have his ashes scattered at the Hog's Breath Saloon. And I went down there and I called her and I said, you bring me the guitar and I'll pay you for it and I'll take it back with me. So we had all these musicians show up. It's kind of like the Porch Fest thing. I mean, it was just hundreds of musicians show up in honor of my buddy Red. And about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning after it was over, I told her to bring me the guitar, so she did, but she brought me a cardboard box. I said, I opened the box and there was nothing but pieces in it. Parts and pieces of a guitar. So I paid her for it and I took the box home and I set it downstairs and I stared at it for a year. I walked past it twice a day, every year, for a whole year. And finally it just overwhelmed me to the point that I said, you're gonna finish it. So I started trying to envision this. I had no woodworking background, none whatsoever. But I was an engineer. I did have a music background. I did have some artist skills. And I said, well, I don't know what else I need other than to know how to use these tools. And so finally, I took off from work 6 weeks. And I'd never left the business over 4 days, the entire time I had the business. Took off 6 weeks and I went to school in Atlanta. Came back the next year, I had more questions than I had answered. So I took off 6 more weeks and went back to Atlanta. And this time I actually built some guitars that were pretty good. And found out I had a talent for it. And so, to make a long story short, that's how we got to there. You call it divine intervention, I call it being blessed. And so, I'm very, very proud to be here today to share that story. And hopefully, if some of you have a dream that you haven't fulfilled yet, you'll take whatever it is needed so that you will ultimately and eventually realize that dream. Thank you.
All right. Every entrepreneur has a story. This is a wonderful one. Any questions? I ask this of every musician that stands up there. How many guitar pickers in Nashville?
I don't know, but every one of them's got a case to go with it.
That's right, 1,352 according to Nashville Cats and the Lovin' Spoonful, but that's beside the point. Okay, so questions, please, Mike. Questions? Okay, here we go.
You got some guitars over at Soglo Gallery? Is that right?
Yes, yes.
Is that the only place that you can see them?
You can see them at my shop
Where's your shop?
on Shell Drive, right in Brunswick.
Is that right by where Pro Page used to be?
It's directly behind it.
Okay.
All you gotta do is call me.
When you say custom, what are the components of custom that you work on?
Everything is done by hand. If you get a chance to come up and look at this guitar, this is Claro walnut for the back and sides. The top is Adirondack spruce. The internal braces are Adirondack spruce. And the neck is mahogany. Fretboard is ebony. And all of this, even the pearl inlay, is hand cut with a jeweler's saw. So when I say custom, that's exactly what I mean. It started as some raw wood and turned into this.
How
So,
much did that cost?
A lot.
I'm super loud as well.
Please shout.
Do you have anybody out there touring right now? I was a guitar tech for 30 years, so I'm wanting to know, is there anybody playing your guitars out there now?
Yep, Crawford Perkins, some of you may have heard of him. He hangs out this place quite a bit. He plays one of my guitars. Locally, you've got Joey Thigpen. He plays one. Up in Darien is, help me, what's his name? Will. Yeah, Will. What's his last name?
Will Gore.
Will Gore plays one. I got a couple being played down in Islamorada in the Florida Keys. And I got guitars in Chicago, Atlanta, just all over the place.
Oh, okay.
Fixing to send one to Missouri. But somebody always asks me that question, and I think I'm gonna send one to, I don't know, somebody famous, just so I can have an answer for
That's
them.
why I was asking, because I used to work for the Stones and Whitney Houston and Janet Jackson, so there's a lot of guitar techs out there that might be interested in your guitar, so maybe we can talk about it after.
Sure.
All right, another question. Very good. For all those people who said we didn't have creative people in Brunswick, Georgia who are entrepreneurial, I'm sorry, Chef. Sorry, Chef. So, Mike, this is just super. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And again, to prove you were here, here's our 1 in 1 million cups, and I think that would make it all the way down to Key West as well. Thank you very much. Thank you. We'll see you the first Wednesday of December, which is the 4th. Is that right? Is that 4th and 9 o'clock here at Tipsy's. Thank you all very, very much.